Charles Bronson, the highly uncalled for podcast that takes a look at news and pop culture through the steely-eyed gaze of America's number one action star. And that action star, of course, is Charles Bronson. And tonight we've got breaking news. We've got the creator, the writer, the star of Charles Bronson, not just the Vigilante, the musical, Mr. Henry Brooks with us. Thank you. Mr. Henry Brooks, how you doing today?
Hey man, I'm great. The title is more than the vigilante, but it's
More
close.
than a vigilante. What did I say? Not just a vigilante?
Okay,
My apologies. My
that's cool.
apologies. But the name, I like the name more than a vigilante,
Thank you.
because I feel like that's kind of what our program was kind of about too. Like we took a kind of a humorous approach to like watching the movies, but as things went on, we kind of like got really in. I've always been a huge fan of Charles Bronson, and the I always wanted people to see a different side of him. I think a lot of people only know the canon films of the mid to late 80s, like a lot of people, especially our age or whatever. So uh, let's just start by asking, why a musical about Charles Bronson?
Well, I've been a fan of this guy for a while, and just like you, I felt like, he was more than that. Like he's more than just Death Wish and like this criminal killer killing thugs on the streets. I wanted people, like you said, to see another side of him. And I started watching his films, The Magnificent Seven, Great Escape, Dirty Dozen. And they're so much better than Death Wish, in my opinion. And also, like, even though he's like this tough guy on screen, he's not emotionless. Like, he has a heart and he has emotion. And like, even in Death Wish, like you see him scared at one point when he's killing the muggers.
Right. And in real life, I mean, we've been fortunate enough to have some people who worked with him on here, and we had one guy that did not like him very much, Juan Fernandez, who was in Kinjite. I don't know if you ever see that film. He was Duke, the bad guy from
I
Kinjite.
I have
But
not seen that film.
yeah, but we had Jan Gann Boyd, who was loved him, and Jordan Rhodes had some good things to say about him. Who Jordan Rhodes was in two films with him. But it seems like everybody who knew anything about him did. He was a deeply personal person, and he kept a lot of things, a lot of his life personal. And I think that's why he came across as being this cold individual to a lot of people. But his upbringing, which was pretty harsh. So I mean, you can imagine someone who came up the way he did would have that kind of attitude, maybe. And does your musical explore his like his growing up at all?
It
In
actually does. Like it starts from when he's a kid to his death. Like I'm not sure if you know, as a kid, he had to work in a coal mine to feed his
Mhm.
family. So he was a
Yeah,
tough guy. He had a lot to handle.
yeah, very tough guy. Yeah, here in Pennsylvania, I'm in Pennsylvania. Me and Danny Getz are in Pennsylvania, and Bradley the Badass, the Arkansas, uh, our Arkansas reporter there. But yeah, we're in Pennsylvania, and yeah, I do know that he grew up in
Aaron
well,
Felt.
Renfell, yeah, and I'm hoping to take it's about 4 hours from me. I'm hoping to take a trip there someday.
Yeah, I've been wanting to go too, but I mean, there's like nothing there, but maybe just the Dairy Queen and a few
Yeah,
motels.
I looked up and by the way, I did my whole intro in the beginning. I didn't introduce the American Brad ass, the number one dad ass Brad Crane, and I didn't introduce the teenage heartthrob Danny Getz on the phone and taking your calls and spinning tracks.
That's
So
that's okay. It's cool.
yeah. But we did introduce you, so that's important.
Yeah.
I'm excited to interview you. I'm gonna let Brad talk in a moment here. When I
Awesome.
first, so friends of mine who know I do this podcast, I do. Me and Danny do stand up comedy here in Philly. So one of my stand up comedian friends like tagged me in something that I believe Steven Glickman posted about a guy that's going to be playing a Michael Winner in the thing. And right away, I see like comedians and all, and I thought, well, this is going to be like a joke. This is going to be some kind of, which humor is. Look, when it comes to Bronson awareness, which is very important to us. If you have to use humor, that's there's nothing wrong with that. Humor is a very important thing to us here. But I thought it was going to be like one of those kind of like ironic hipster type jokes where you're kind of like making fun of Bronson. But then I saw the clip of Bronson doesn't sing. You guys were practicing it, and I was like, Oh, this is good. This is funny. Um, it's good, and it's obviously not a one-sided kind of joke. And I wanted to ask you, do you have a background in musical theater or music or anything?
I've actually, I'm a writer, and that's what I want to do in the future. And I've written musicals before. I mean, just one when I was little, but I wanted to do it again. And so, yeah, I met with my music director. We just got to work and we started working on it. And I play a little piano too. You know, I would hum the tunes to my music director. He'd put it to music and we distribute it.
Now, is Stephen J. Glickman, is that the music director?
No, he's not the music director. He's my producer. He saw my
Mhm.
show and heard the songs, and he really wanted to make something with it.
Excellent, cool. Brad, did you have any questions for the young man?
Well, first, I just want to compliment you, Henry, on your shirt. I'm
Oh,
also
thank-
wearing a Charles Bronson shirt myself, so
oh,
it's kind of my it's kind of my costume. I bought it when I was in watching a Bronson triple feature last year in the Mahoning Drive-In in Pennsylvania. I drove 17 hours to watch Charles Bronson movies
well,
on
I
a at a
probably would
drive-in
too. Yeah, thanks,
theater.
man. Great shirt.
But one of the things that I did just stumble upon this myself. I'm one of these types that about once a month or so, I'll just Google Charles Bronson to see if I can find any information out there. And that's how I read about this Charles Bronson more than a vigilante, the musical. And then and then I also saw some YouTube clips that show two songs from the musical. And I just thought it was interesting. Being the person my age, I remember Steven Weber from, Wings. That was the
That's
show
right.
that I loved growing up. And then when I saw that he was involved in recording this, and Lisa Loeb, but she was involved in it. But where I really got some credibility from you, Henry, is whenever in the Bronson Don't Sing, when you didn't just mention the Magnificent Seven, Dirty Dozen, Great Escape, you mentioned the movie Red Sun.
That's the first one of his I saw. It was such a great film.
So that kind of made me want to ask you, what are your favorite Charles Bronson movies?
Probably those ones.
Well,
Yeah, Red
I love
Sun.
Red Sun because of the Charles Bronson, and then also one of my other favorite actors is Toshiro Mifune, who
Sure,
was
that's right. He's a great actor. He's like the Japanese Charles Bronson.
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
And don't forget Alain Delon, who's
Oh,
uh,
that's
Yeah,
right, Elaine.
who's almost like the French James Dean almost, I guess, or so, or you,
That's
or who, or even I don't know. He's a beautiful man, and he does a lot of good films too. He's in one with Bronson, if you ever get a chance, called Farewell Friend. It's a really
Oh
good.
yeah, I've been meaning to see that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
Now
how
on
old
that
are
clip,
you?
I could
Oh, I'm
only
sorry.
see
Go on.
two. I'm sorry. On that clip, I only could see two of the songs. Are there other ways of seeing any of your other songs out there right now, Henry? Or are those the only two you can see online?
Well, actually, right now, like first it was a little musical at my school. Now it's being turned into a concept album, which will be done by I'd say spring. They're mixing it right now, but there is a link to the full musical on YouTube, and I can send it to you. It's a private YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be great. I'd love to see more of it if I
Of
could.
course, yeah.
Yeah, we'd love that. And that brings me to, since he mentioned Steven Weber, so you're going to be in the actual play. How did a record get start to get made?
Well, I mean, I was in the play, and Steven was there, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, we got to do something with this. Like, we got to turn this into an album." And I'm like, "I'm all for it. Let's get to work."
So the play is already premiered somewhere then.
Well, I mean, yeah, it premiered at my school first. Like, it was first just a project I did.
Now, when you say school, are you a high schooler?
Yeah, I'm still a high schooler. I'm 18, senior
Oh
year.
my God. I'm 48. And you want to know something? The reason I started this, and I'm very proud of you, by the way. You're
Thanks.
a great young man. The reason why I started this show is because I've talked to people as young as 40 or old as 40 to you that don't remember who Charles Bronson is.
A lot of
And
people don't.
yeah, and I'm 48, and I'll be honest with you, I'm actually pretty young, and so is Brad. Like, I didn't start, I didn't get into Bronson until he was already in his 60s, around 1987, like when Death Wish 4, that like video stores is what, and catching him on what we called UHF stations back in the day, back before cable, there was hundreds of channels on cable, every city had UHF channels. So Saturday afternoon action theaters and all that. So to see an 18-year-old man like Love Bronson, um, have that mindset to see him as more than just this, because we have a lot. We'll have younger people on the show, like Danny is the teenager on the show because he's 34, and they like, they're a little snarky and they make fun of the movies and stuff like that. But and I mean, and some of them are funny. I mean, there is stuff to laugh at. I mean, but in the 80s. But I'm really proud of you, man. That's really amazing. And it's
Yeah.
Steven Weber. So I didn't. Now Lisa Loeb, like a guy my age, she was like the cute.
Yeah, she's
Like,
great. They both
oh
are.
yeah, she was like kind of like a heartthrob to like nerdy guys like me. Like when we were young, because she had the glasses and she was cute and
Yeah.
all that. And she's still cute. She's like 55 and she looks like she definitely looks younger than me. I know that. But then a lot of people do. And when I was let me see, when I was looking through, kind of like not stalking you, but looking at your Instagram pictures, I was like, you know, nobody looks like Charles Bronson. But I was like, this kid doesn't not look like him. Like I could see how he could play him. Like I
That
mean,
is the
like
greatest compliment I've received.
I mean, there was a picture. You had a picture. You're obviously were doing the woodcutting scene in
That's
Magnificent
magnificent.
Seven.
That's my inspiration. I'm
Uh-huh.
glad you caught that.
Hmm. And
Well,
go ahead, Brad.
well, I was just going to ask, we all kind of we've got a Facebook page that we look at, and we've talked about kind of where we came to know Bronson. And for me, it was just one evening. Me and my dad were staying up late, and a late movie came out on, and it was on TV, so it was an edited version. I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. It was the original Death Wish. And my dad, as bad things were happening, Dad would say, "Oh, don't worry, son. Bronson will take care of it." Well, that's the first time I'd ever seen Bronson, and I thought, "Who? This is an interesting guy. That Dad knows about him. Apparently, he's got this reputation." What was the moment for you, Henry, that you like saw Bronson or saw a movie or something where you said, "This guy's interesting"? Because once I saw Death Wish, that was also the kind of the heyday when home video started, and I love to go to the video store. And I saw Death Wish, and then all of a sudden I see Bronson on all these VHS covers, and I wanted to start kind of renting everything he was in. What was that kind of moment, or what led you to that Bronson moment?
Well, I mean, the first film I saw of his was Red Sun, but then I saw Magnificent Seven. And there's this, I'm sure if you've seen it, there's this one scene where, he's like this tough guy, a handyman. But when he's leaving the village, like these three children are chasing after him. They're like, "We don't take us with you. Our fathers are cowards." And he says, "No, they are not. They put their lives at risk to keep yours safe." So, like, he's a tough guy, but you see his sensitive, soft side.
Mhm.
That
And
that
that's,
was my favorite thing about the Magnificent Seven too. That whole speech that he gives them about how
yeah,
their parents are brave and yeah, and when he dies at the end and the children go up to his grave or they, what's my name, and they say his name, he's like, "You're damn right."
that's right. Yeah. No, his character stuck out to me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a great movie. For me, it was like, and I'm glad Brad asked that because that was going to be one of my questions too. For me, I was flipping through the channels and I came across this film, Evil That Men Do.
Still
That
got to see that.
was what's that?
I still got to see that.
Oh, it's very, so that's a weird one to have as your first when you're about 15 years old or 14 years old, or probably younger. I was probably like 12, but yeah, 87, I'd be a 12. But it's a very sadistic, kind of exploitive, kind of eerie. It's hard to explain, but it was it was so different than any action film I had ever seen. And his look, everything about him, the way he carried himself and his look, like everything was just made me think like I wanted to know more about this guy. Like I wanted to see every movie. And and back then you take a videotape and put it in, and I would go through the TV guide and find every film. I like just look for his name, and when it was a movie, no matter what it was he was in, I would record it. and I seen all different kinds of movies because a lot of people, unless you really dove into them, excuse me, I'm getting over a little cold here.
All right.
Unless you really dove into his career, what was going on at the moment was all Death Wish 3, Death Wish 4, assassination, you know, unless you dove into it like I did, then you saw some things like Rider on the Rain, which is like a French film that's like um was a pretty big hit in France and a minor hit here in the States. Things like Guns for San Sebastian that were like kind of like along the lines of Magnificent Seven, but just weren't big box office smashes and stuff like that. And so like it became more for me about the mystique of this guy because there was so much different. Like I was like, what is he? Is he like well, I wasn't even sure what nationality he was or anything like that. And so for me, it was like doing that and going to the video stores, hunting things down. What is an 18-year-old? Do you find yourself overnight or suddenly obsessed with some an actor or something like this? How do you find the films?
You mean what do I think of his films?
No, no, where how do you like so I'm
Oh, how do
sorry.
I find them? I,
Maybe I didn't articulate
that's all right.
myself
Honestly,
well enough.
just Amazon Prime. It's very
Yeah.
easy.
Right.
You ever look at Tubi? You ever look at that app Tubi, Henry?
I know of Tubi, but I don't really watch it.
Okay, they've got a great selection of Bronson movies on Tubi. If you go and just look him up on Tubi, Amazon has a pretty good selection of those that you can just, watch if you're a member of Prime. But Tubi, of course, is a free app, and they've probably got 20 movies of Bronson. And
Yeah.
most of them they're like a lot of his very best movies from the early 70s all the way up through the late 80s. So,
Oh yeah, awesome. I'll be sure to check that out.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So like what set Bronson aside for you? I mean, to take that kind of interest in him that to make a musical about him, there's something different than him than other action stars or tough guys in film. Like what set him aside for you? What really made you like choose him over other stars?
Well, really, it's because like I said, he's like a tough guy, but like he also has a sweet, soft, sensitive side. So he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he doesn't. It's kind of both. It's interesting.
Have
That's
you
what
read
I thought.
have you read any books about Bronson or
Yeah, I've read a few books, and I've really learned about his life. Like I know, like in the movies, he was like the tough guy, but also the sweet, soft, sensitive side. And but I looked up facts about him too, and I'm like, that's how he was in real life too. When you learn about his childhood, what he had to go through, how he overcame those things, like he had to grow as a person, and like he was really a fighter, not just in the films. That's why he spoke out to me.
he's a good example of what people would call the American dream. And I think a lot of it has to do with World War II. I think a lot of people got out of
It's true, yeah.
their poor t neighborhoods and stuff after World War II. And his he was an artist. He was a painter.
That's right.
And when I read a couple of things that in the art school they had like a drama department and he tried it out and he was like that is the easiest thing I ever did, so he kind of stuck with it. And that's a neat story when you think about it. You think about a guy when you think about where he came from, and then you think about his first film was 1951. His last was like TV film.
1998.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah, I
that's
know
a
the first film was You're in the Navy Now. It's World War
yes.
II itself. But I know Bronson was also, I saw him in an interview and he said, I was in the gym one time and my friend said, geez, Charlie, you got to be an actor. So he
Mhm.
took his advice.
Yeah, I believe he was in Philadelphia, which is where
He
kind
was,
of
yeah.
yeah, and he was Jack Klugman's roommate, which
Yeah, I read about that too.
yeah,
I
that's
like your
amazing.
song "Leave the Mind Behind" because
Thank
that
you.
song does point out at first that he was reluctant to leave, but ultimately Bronson would say that one of the greatest things that ever happened to him was going in the army and being involved in the war, because that's where he finally got 3 meals a day and all that kind of stuff. That
Yeah, I
was
mentioned
one of the
that.
greatest things.
I mentioned that on I mentioned that in my show. He said I was well fed, I was well dressed, well fed, was taken from down in the mines to up in the sky.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But
That's
yeah,
how I
like
knew you
it
were
must have
being serious because you knew you had done your research. You knew about Bronson. You knew his early life. Now that's all I saw with those two songs, but you knew his early life.
I did, and I mean, it must have been scary to step outside your comfort zone, no matter how terrible it was, like working in a mine, and then going to
Right.
fight in the war. It's even scarier. Not to mention the fact he got the Purple Heart.
Hmm.
That's right.
Yeah, even when it's uncomfortable, it's still your comfort zone where you grow up and yeah,
Yeah,
I mean it's kind of a dead end, dead end. I was looking at the statistics of that area and Renfeld is almost like non-existent. It's a part of Carbon County, Pennsylvania, and it's a part of the Jonestown area. But Renfeld's actually a borough, which I think is even smaller than a town, and I think there's only like 600 people there or something.
yeah,
I'd love to go there. I want to go there and I want to go to his grave.
yeah. I want to
Um,
go there too. Although, but I think he's buried in Vermont.
Vermont, yeah, I want to go there. But that is more that's probably a nicer trip with the family, you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I mean, he had a house there. That was his vacation home.
Yes,
Mhm.
he loved Vermont from
He did.
we interviewed Richard Fleischer is a legendary director. He's passed, but I interviewed his son and his son-in-law, and his son-in-law was an AIP, some kind of intern for the American Institute of Film or American something. And he spent a lot of time with Bronson. He said Bronson on the set, and he said of Mr. Majestic, and he said Bronson talked a lot about his home up in Vermont and how much he loved it there.
Yeah, his only regrets was they didn't spend enough time there.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't really like, he wasn't a real big fan of, I don't think he was a big fan of acting. I think he
He
liked to
wasn't really,
write.
I think he would have preferred to, just paint. And I mean, I understand that, but I mean, he did it career-wise. And I think he really wants to stay because his wife was an actor too.
Right, right.
Right.
So in
Well,
the year 2000, there was 234 people in Renveld.
Oh, wow.
sounds like some of the towns I grew up in. We laugh because I'm actually from a place called Toadsuck, Arkansas, Henry. It's a real place.
And I apologize, it's Cambria County, not Carbon County.
That's all right.
But
I
those
know
are those counties. Pennsylvania is filled with those counties that are just like very desolate right now. That I mean, there's no coal industry, there's no hardly any steel industry anymore. I mean, my grandparents came from areas like that. Not that area, but areas like it.
oh, wow. Yeah, I know. I think it's like, it's not a ghost town, but like, there's nothing to do. Like I said, it's probably just a few motels and like a McDonald's.
I would still love it though. I would, you know what
Yeah,
I
I
would
like
be?
this
I'd
there.
be a pain in the ass. I'd be asking people like I bet people like get asked all the time about Charles Bronson there. You know, even now
For
to
the
this
people who
day.
remember him, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite days of my life, it's sad to say that was one of my favorite days of my life, but it was, I can't deny it, was my wife and I were in Estes Park, Colorado late last summer. And our way back, we drove through southern Colorado and went through the town of Manzanola and the town of La Junta. And those were very prominently featured in the Charles Bronson movie, Mr. Majestic. And
Oh,
just
yeah.
being there, where he filmed those scenes, I felt like I did some YouTube videos for our page, and like I would walk across the street, the same place Charles Bronson did, and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
A
it
lot of
sounds
it looked
great.
the same. Yeah, a lot of it looked the same too. You got to see the videos.
It's awesome, dude.
Yeah, I wish
Now,
more. No, go
with
ahead, Brad.
when I was younger, like I was like in high school, and I was a huge Bronson fan already. And I've got a daughter who's also a senior in high school this year. This is her senior year, and so. But when I was in high school, really in junior high, I had I played basketball and and that type of thing. I had a lot of friends, but my friends all just kind of tolerated they liked me, so they had tolerated my love of Bronson. With what you have done, creating this musical that's been performed at school or wherever all that's been performed. I'm not sure if that was at school. You can fill me in on
Yes.
where that was performed, but do you have a lot of are there other people like in your circle and stuff that really love Bronson, or do they just more, well, Henry loves Bronson, it's cool, he's written this musical? Tell me more about what it's like for you as a teenager who loves Bronson.
I mean, I have like some really good friends who have started to watch Bronson now because I've introduced them to Bronson. But a lot of the people like in my class, like I think they like him because I like him more of like, well, Henry wrote this musical. Nothing wrong with that, but I mean, like they're not legitimate fans like I am.
Right, right.
But they know
Yeah.
the name because of you, and that's
It's
important.
true.
Yeah. A lot of people like this whole show's about not just keeping his name alive, but just keeping names alive.
Yeah.
Of it's just so many, so much. I love showbiz all around, but there's so many great like actors and actresses that like even nowadays that nobody knows the names of, you know. And yeah, one of the things we do on this show, actually, on the episodes where we don't have big celebrity interviews like you and Juan Fernandez from Injite, however the hell you say it, um, is what we do is we get somebody to come on and we all watch a movie and then we take the date of the movie was released and we talk about what albums were out, what was on TV, what was in the movies. So that way we get to talk about different cross sections of pop culture and we get to keep names alive and stuff like that. So I think it's great that people just know the name Charles Bronson now because of you. You know that weren't going to know it.
I think so too. And I also want to make sure they know him in the right way, not just the vigilante, tough guy, tough with emotion.
Mhm. Yeah, well, Bronson, he gets beat up a little bit by the critics, especially when he goes into the 80s. His 70s movies and the movies you're talking about when he was more like in the large, he had great roles in like or not Mr. Majestic, The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape and The Dirty Dozen. He was part of this big cast of great actors, but in each of those he stood out.
He
He
did,
stood
yeah.
out.
Yeah, and he stood out in The Great Escape because like he was really tough in that film. Like, and you see his soft side, like when he's afraid to go through that tunnel. He still does it.
Mm-hmm. You
Yeah,
felt like
his
he was, kind of portraying his own life in some ways,
I think
in
so
that.
too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said like being in that tunnel brought back memories of the mind. So it must have been hard for him in real life. Maybe he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't acting.
Right.
right. Yeah. And those films, his he has one of the most like improbable careers because those films really set him up to be a legendary like character actor. For all intents and purposes, he should have just been a character actor, but he persevered and pushed through and insisted on he wanted to be a star. And so he went to Europe in his what, late 40s, early 50s, or late mid to late 40s, and
Right.
Death Wish, the original that made him a star here in America, although, you know, he was recognized here in America, but the film that made him a star here in America, I think he was
52
54,
when he made Death.
52,
Yeah.
He
yeah.
was 52 when he made Death Wish.
I mean, what an improbable. I don't think that anybody else has a story like that. I really don't. I mean,
Yeah,
you
I
could.
don't think so. His story specifically stands out to me at least.
Mhm. Have you spoken to anybody in his family? Have you been able to get in touch with anybody? Any of his kids?
Actually, I have. His stepson, Val McCallum, who's a musician now, he
Yeah.
came to my show and he loved it. He really loved it.
Wow. I've tried to get him to come on this show, but I know that that family's very private and all that. But he seems like he'd be if anybody would talk to you. Like he seems like I love. Have you seen the songs that like Charlie's Cole and the one
I've
he
been
did?
meaning to hear that. I'm going to listen to that tonight. But yeah, he's
Oh yeah.
great. He's a great guy. And what he really loved about the show is, I know we didn't talk about this a lot, but the show is revolved around his mom, Jill Ireland.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
At
Yeah,
the
and
end
he what's that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
at the end of Bronson's life, you really see that he was a fighter because he's fighting to save her from cancer, and sadly, she doesn't make it. But he
Right.
fought for her.
Mm-hmm. I was
Henry, do
go
you
ahead.
mind going into that a little bit more? You just said that the show revolved around Jill. Like I said, I've only been able to watch those first two songs, so he's just leaving Ehrenfeld whenever I've seen it. Could you tell us a little bit more about the kind of where the direction the show heads from there?
For sure. Later on, he meets Jill Ireland, who she helps him grow as a person. He learns more about himself, and he really loves this woman. And at the end, when she's dying, you see his vulnerable side. Like he's doing everything he can to fight for her. So you his vulnerable but tough side. And at the end, when she's no longer there, he sings this song called "I Couldn't Beat the Cancer," where he could, in the films, he could kill all these bad guys, but not the cancer, the villain that took his wife.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you base that song on? Did you ever read her book that she wrote about her struggle with cancer? Because one of the things she says in the book specifically is that Bronson could pull out a machine gun or something and blow away bad guys, but he could not do the same with the cancer cells. I was just wondering if you had heard that quote and led to that.
Actually, no, but that's really interesting.
Yeah,
But was the book Life Wish? Because I haven't read it.
yeah. Her great autobiography about her, or I say autobiography, but about her dealing with cancer, was called Life Wish, which was a very interesting title considering that Bronson's most famous movie is Death Wish. And it's really an interesting read, and it does tell you a lot about her, and then also Bronson himself trying to help her. He really struggled, but he ultimately, loved her dearly, just like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Now, is that like, no, I know the song Bronson Don't Sing, but like, does he sing in the play or is he just
At
sing
the
that
very end,
song?
that's the last song he sings. He's like, Jill Ireland was the love of my life. I need to make this one exception.
Wow. Now, it's fun, I find that interesting because the only time that I can recall him ever singing in a movie was in Death Hunt when he's in Alaska. He's being hunted down by an angry mob of
Lee
Mounties.
Marvin and Carl Weathers, who just passed on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he sings "My Darling Clementine," and there's my theory of his character in that movie, because they never tell you, well, even the character that's based on real life, there's a lot of theories on, a lot of people don't know the true story. But my theory was I always thought that his character kind of was out there in the wilderness alone, trying to get over the death of his wife. And I thought that's why only because of him singing that song while he was hiding out down in that ditch. And so I wanted to bring that up because I just thought, like, Bronson don't sing, but he does sing kind of in that film a little bit. And
It's
I
true.
and my theory was he was singing about lamenting a late wife. And other people thought that it was about a daughter that died too. Some other people thought that it might have been that he lost his family. Or
Yeah, I've never seen the film, but I gotta check that out.
you gotta, you know what, you should watch it and we should have you back on and we should do the thing that we do, the original format of the show, because I didn't think I was ever going to get guests. I'd bring on like my comedian friends or whoever, and I love to have people that never saw Bronson. That was my favorite. Like, and I'd sign them a movie, and we talked about the movie, but then we would also talk about the albums that were out that time and the TV shows. And we have done Death Hunt already, but we should do that again because I think that's one that you have to see. I
Yeah,
don't
for
know.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
watch.
yeah, that is a classic, man. And I'm so excited for you, like that you have all these films that you haven't seen yet. I mean that, I'm excited for you. When I discovered him, like it was the same thing. It was like, I mean, he was still making stuff, but I mean, really, when I discovered him, I mean, it was like maybe three or four more films that he made, and then he did TV movies.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting to have all that to look forward to, and then there'll be ones that you watch over and over. Like, is there what one do you watch over and over again?
Probably Red Sun and Magnificent Seven. Dirty Dozen too.
Hmm.
Now, where all of you performed this musical? You mentioned you mentioned that Valentine was there at one of the shows. You mentioned that Steven Weber was at one of the shows. Where all of you performed this
Even
musical?
Weber wasn't at the show. He was in the recording. I
Oh, I
performed in my school, and yeah, it's my school just not far from where I live. I'm in Los Angeles.
okay. So you've only performed it at this point at your school.
Well, yeah, but we're recording the place. We're recording the songs at the studio, and it should be out by March, where you can hear everything.
Is there
Well,
a future like are there plans to? I mean, is Broadway on your mind at all, or?
Actually, yes, I know this Broadway company on Instagram. They're promoting it, and for all we know, that they might have a party in New York for all I hear. So
Yeah.
hopefully this is Broadway bound, and it's going to be up there with Hamilton, Lion King, all
Hmm.
that stuff.
Yeah, New York is only a train ride, about a 2 hour train ride from me, so I'll be there. I
Mhm.
would be, I'd be honored to see that. I'd
Thank
love
you.
to see that up there with the cats. I'd love
Yeah,
to
maybe
see Bronson win a Tony. Well, not Bronson, but I mean a Bronson has something that has to do with him win a Tony.
that would be awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
that would be so awesome. Well, I shared this on our Facebook page back in January the 8th, and like I said, at that time we weren't sure about this. It was the first we'd heard about it, but I was just kind of looking through the comments of some of the people that, like John McNee, he's in our page. He says, "Well, that's something I never thought I'd see," but he's intrigued.
Mhm.
uh, this is awesome news. What a cool idea and excellent cast. People, this is weird and very cool. I know one thing's for sure. You're going to have a bunch of people from our group that when this comes out, and you're going to have a lot of purchases from the This Week in Charles Bronson Facebook group. I know that.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're gonna eat this up. I'm gonna be honest with you. So just a couple of days ago, because my friends are comedians and all that, because they're the ones that steered me towards this, I was starting to think, oh my God, are they pranking me? But then Brad showed me the Broadway. Of course, then I was like, okay, there's no way they went that far to make an article with Steven Weber and Lee. But I was just like, man, like, is this a prank? Like, because I do feel sometimes I do think that some of my comedian friends behind my back are a little snarky about the direction I've taken, like everybody does a funny, oh, we're all laughing about shit podcast. And I was like, I can't do that. I got to do something original. And the only thing I knew a lot about and really, really loved was Bronson movies. And I knew it would lead to talking about other pop culture nonsense. And yeah, but that wasn't really a question. I think there was a time where I thought maybe my friends were like playing a spook, like playing a trick on me. Like, there's a guy playing Michael Winner.
that's
I
right.
thought, I mean, now that's a character right there. What do you know about Michael Winner? Because he was a character in real life, that dude.
Well, I don't know much about him, but I know the whole song. It's about when Bronson auditions for Death Wish and he gets the role. It's the song. The song is called "I've Got a Death Wish." I know originally they wanted Henry Fonda, and Henry Fonda's like, "I'm not going to do this. I have the
Mhm.
reputation of being a nice guy. The script sucks." And so,
Right.
like, I'll do it, and he got the role.
Did you ever hear the story of Michael Winner telling him the idea of the movie? And Bronson says, I'd like to do that. He's like, the movie? No, shoot muggers or something. I'm like, I don't know if that's
I read
true.
that quote, but I know
Yeah.
what in the play, what happens is during the song, Michael Winter gives Fonda the script and he's reading through it. Kill this person, smile and point to the camera while winking. What is your problem? He walks out. And then Bronson reads the same thing. Kill this person. I love this. I'm in.
I'm so excited about this. This is great.
Thank you so
I,
much.
I'm definitely going to order it when it comes out. You
Yeah, and
should.
I can send you the link for the musical too.
Oh,
That'd be
excellent.
great.
Cool. That would be great, man. Let
So,
me
how
see.
did you get the attention of these folks like uh, Steven Weber? Because, like you said, he's performing on this. How did you get? How did they hear of this idea you had? Because I love Bronson, talked about it, but nobody's ever listened to me. How did you get this and it get bigger and actually have a chance to record this, Henry?
I'll be honest with you. I think it's the producer whose name is also Steven with the PH, Steven Glickman, since he's a comedian. I think he had Steven Weber on his podcast one time, and so he reached out to him because we were looking to find who's a great Bronson. We reached out to Steven Weber, and thankfully Steven Glickman is also friends with Lisa Loeb. So I worked hard for the rest, but that part was just pure luck.
Oh, really?
I'm jealous of this guy, Stephen Glickman, because I didn't know about him until this. And he's
He's
kind
hilarious.
yeah, and he's coming to Philly this Wednesday. I hope I can get out there, but he's also like a old school showbiz guy. He sings, he
He does,
acts, he does,
and
he writes. I was just like, wow, he's the total package there. And he's friends with Lisa Loeb. You
that's
know,
right. And I know
I s-
you have
with
an
that
eight-year-old daughter, right?
a what?
An eight-year-old daughter?
8-year-old son.
Oh, eight-year-old son, my bad.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's okay.
anyways, does he know the TV show Big Time Rush?
I think so. Is that on Nickelodeon?
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
Steven's in it. He's the star.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
really?
yeah, he's one
He's
of the
Bob
voices,
Rock.
right?
He's
Okay.
hilarious.
Yeah. And he's friends with Lisa Loeb, and I have a podcast, and I'm a comedian. I'm friends with Brad. What the hell?
We're now friends with Henry too.
That's right, man. You're all cool.
Yeah. If you have you seen Assassination? Because we're gonna have Jan Gann Boyd from Assassination on.
Oh wow, yeah, I have. It's where he's protecting the first lady. That's a great film.
Yeah. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was actually on before, and she's coming back. She's like a really big good friend of the show. She would love you. She would love like she loved Bronson, and she would love to know that there's a young. We're definitely gonna let her know about you. You know what I mean?
Oh, thanks, man. Is she the Asian woman who Bronson falls in love with?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's
Like
the Asian.
young
Yeah.
enough to be his daughter in the film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she
That
still
same
looks the
year.
same. She still
Yeah.
looks the same. She's got to, well, I'm not going to say how old I think she is, but she's got to be, she's not young. Not young as she was, I mean, but she looks like she's 30 still. Like it's
That
amazing.
same year she made Assassination, Henry, she also starred in a movie called Still Justice. And she played like a 14-year-old girl.
Oh,
In
I haven't seen.
the same year she
Yeah.
did Assassination.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to, like Juan Fernandez is a funny one because he hated Bronson. He says to
Oh,
me, if you ever see, so you might want to see Kinjit. I call it Kinjit. The whole episode, he's a Dominican actor in the whole episode, and he's very eccentric and he's very like he kept correcting me. Kinjite, Kinjite.
why did he hate Bronson? Like, what do you have against this guy?
Bronson wasn't very nice to him, which we hear that from. It seemed like Bronson was really friendly with females and kids, but
I,
also was right when I mean it was the worst time of it was 1989. It was right before Jill died, and I think the guy could if I could go back in time and redo the interview. It was my first like interview with somebody who had worked with him, and I just kind of let him talk. And if I could go back, I'd be like, well, don't you think maybe he was going through something at that time? You know, like you can't be everybody's buddy, and his wife was dying, and
it's true, but I also suspect that he felt he was intimidated by other actors because he was this young guy just coming from a small town working in the mine, didn't speak
Mhm.
proper English yet, and then he goes to Hollywood and like there's all these actors who've been big stars. I bet he felt really inferior. I think I even read he said he felt like the lowest of all people in the mine. And imagine just going out into the real world.
Right.
Yeah, and that's my theory with him too. Is because of that, I've read that as well. But also because I feel like as I get older, you become more introspective and you think about behaviors and like why did I used to lash out about this or that when I was younger, or why was I get so angry about this or that? And I think all of us, most of our bad behaviors stem from fear and stem from us wanting to protect our own feelings. And of
I think
course,
the case.
when he first started acting, a lot of people made fun of his accent. To us, it's the coolest voice. Is that I'm Charles Bronson.
Yeah,
But to him, a lot of people made fun of it. A lot of critics said he sounded like a chainsaw or that was running out of gas or something. Or and if you ever catch any like 1954, I think it was called My Six Convicts or My Six Convicts.
Yeah.
He still has he's got his voice is higher and he's got this almost whatever the accent is because he grew up around Lithuanian parents, and in a small town where he heard two different accents all around him, and spoke and probably spoke two different languages, I assume.
Well, he spoke, I think, four, Lithuanian, English, Greek, and Russian.
Yeah,
Mm.
he was very prolific in other languages. Hey,
Yeah.
Henry, you mentioned that you wrote a song. There was a song specifically in there about Death Wish.
Yeah,
Were there any other movies or any other movies that have kind of their own song or built
actually,
around it?
that's a lot of them. Like basically every other movie in the film does. I mean,
Oh,
and my show does. Like we go through his films, Never So Few, Machine Gun Kelly, Magnificent Seven, Great Escape, Dirty Dozen, Red Sun, and From Noon Till Three.
oh, really?
Oh,
They're on the
wow. Very cool. Very cool. Man, I'm excited.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud.
Aw,
So proud
thanks.
of this young man.
Thanks.
Jesus Christ. You
So
mentioned
you
Machine
mentioned
Gun
earlier you
Kelly.
think this will be out in the spring. You still think this is going to make the spring?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
Mixing it right now.
It's
Cool.
awesome.
I'm gonna try out for a part when it comes to my neighborhood, like the community theater. I'm told when my mustache grows in because it's like white that I look a little bit like Nathan White from Death Wish 4.
Was he the bad guy?
Yeah, the
Right.
what's it oh my God, my one of my favorite John P. Ryan.
That's right.
One of my favorite bad well, not he doesn't always play a bad guy, but one of my favorite character actors who often plays bad guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah.
Death Wish movies were brutal, and like some scenes were really unnecessary. Like in the first one, the rape scene. Like, what the heck, man?
They're very unnecessary. I was like 12, like so I watched Evil That Men Do, and then I think I watched Rider on the Rain, which was very chilled and laid back, and kind of got my eye kind of like trained on like European films. Even though I was too young to really get them, I was like, this got a cool vibe. And then I watched Death Wish when my parents were out one night on HBO, uncut, and that rape scene, like
Uh,
I honestly still fast forwarded if I was watching previous guest Paul Talbot. He wrote a few books about Bronson. They're called Bronson's Loose: The Making of the Death Wish Films and Bronson's Loose Again. And he does commentary on the Death Wish one. So I had to sit through it because he just commentaries the whole thing. He knows everything. He'll tell you about where the spray paint company was from and that they're spraying on her ass and everything. It's amazing.
oh God, yeah, that scene was just very unnecessary. I mean, I know that's what's happening at the time, the
Mhm.
70s, crime and
Mhm.
stuff. But still, like they could have just made, she opens the door for the bad guys, they break in, and we cut to him getting the phone call.
Right.
That's Michael Winner, and I think
Yeah.
Michael Winner had some problems in that
Yeah.
department. We've talked about it on this show. Some people actually get defensive. They get mad at me. They're like, "Oh, Michael Winner was making art, blah blah blah." I've heard some stories where those rape scenes were locked. What do they call it? Like a locked, in a locked studio, and it would go on for days. Like that. That's he had something wrong with him.
He
Uh,
did.
I
I mean,
mean,
I
the
don't
man,
know.
the man made great movies, but there something wasn't right upstairs.
Well, Death
But
Yeah,
Wish 2 was twice as
wacky
bad
odd.
as Death Wish 2 was twice as bad as Death Wish's rape
Oh
scene.
yeah, the housekeeper and the
Mm.
daughter, who
Yeah,
then dies later.
right.
yeah, that's when I was a kid, I didn't like that. Like I was like, I'm a big Bronson fan, but I want to see him save the day. That's why I like this assassination. She doesn't get killed. Like even Love and Bullets, one of my favorites. I don't want to ruin it for you, but
I've seen it.
oh, okay, she gets killed. I'm like, why did she have to get killed? Like, come on, what isn't he supposed to be the hero? That was the one thing that bothered me about the films.
Yeah, I get it too. And I mean, that's why I'm trying to expose people to his other films that aren't just, women getting raped or, being the weakling. Like,
Mhm.
heck.
I like speaking of Red Sun, I like how by the end him and Toshiro made this kind of like unlikely friendship. And in
Yeah.
the end, it wasn't about money or anything anymore. And I love that when he's like, you need, when Elaine Delon's character is like, you need me for, oh, you'll never find the money. He goes,
Yeah, ghost, you keep it. And he
yeah, you keep it. I always never understood why that wasn't a more popular, like people remember, you go to hell, ladies first, and Murphy's Law. I was like, why don't people ever talk about that line? That line that should have been And that movie was meant to be like a big hit
It should have
in
been.
every country. Yeah, it should have been, but
I mean, it's cowboy and samurai. You can't get any cooler than that.
You just
no.
can't get cooler than that here.
And it was like the
Henry,
three biggest stars at the time too. Like,
True, yeah. Ursula Andress too.
oh yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So Henry, are you a fan of From Noon Till Three? Since you said you wrote it as part of it's kind of written about in your musical.
Well, it's a good film, but it's not necessarily PC. So there's actually a song where Jill Ireland sings called Women Matter. It's where they're about to do the not politically correct scene, and she stops him saying, like, we women should not be treated this way. We matter.
Hmm.
Not to say he was a sexist, we're just showing that was wrong at the time.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
there's a few films.
Interesting.
There's a few films. There's that Chino and The Family, aka Violent City, where his character and Jill Ireland are lovers, but he basically rapes her with what
I know.
by today's standards. When I was
Yeah,
a kid, I was like, that was like a lot of cowboy movies. It was like, I know
they
those
get
three,
raped and they end up loving it. Yeah.
yeah, they're just like grab her and like it was, yeah. But he didn't write them. But
It's not.
yeah, he does
So
do a thing.
that's interesting that you use that as a way of making a statement. Because for me, From Noon to Three is one of my lesser. That's not Bronson wanted to do some things different. As you know, Bronson wanted to do something different than just be the tough guy all the time. He talked about how he wanted to make a movie where he could, put his elbow on the mantle and drink a martini, but
Be the goofy
unfortunately
one.
nobody offered those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he wanted to be goofy.
Hmm.
I personally think he would have been great in comedies.
I think,
And well,
yeah.
I think he did comedies. I think he was funny in Breakout. I
Oh, yeah,
think he,
that's a good one. Also, I know on the Dick Cavett show, he was impersonating someone's walk and people were laughing. He knew how to
Mhm.
make people laugh.
Yeah, yeah. That's so freaking. It's interesting to think about because he did turn down some big comedies. He turned down City Slickers. I don't know if you know that.
He did?
He
Yeah.
turned down the character that
Jack Palance played
Jack
that won an
Palance played,
Oscar.
yeah. And he turned down the dad in Billy Madison with Adam Sandler.
Oh wow. I know I didn't know about those, but I know he turned down the Dollar trilogy with Clint Eastwood.
Well,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that his whole career would have been different. But I don't know if like would he be who he is to us if he wasn't somewhat an underdog. I think in a way, even though he was the biggest star in the world at one time, I think in a way he still represents the underdog.
You
Uh,
mean what do you mean by underdog?
like like so yeah, he was the number one star in the world at one time. But basically, and Death Wish was did great in the theaters. But he never really like he doesn't get respected like Clint Eastwood does, and by Hollywood and by critics. And I don't think he gets the respect that he deserves. But I think part of that is what allures us to him too. I think that was part of it is what makes us feel like he's ours. Like he did what he did for us. He said in interviews, I make movies that my fans like. I don't care what the critics think. So I think because he took that stance and because he didn't care if he was ever as big as, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of an underdog in a way.
I can see that. I
Mhm. What do you think about that, Brad? Brad's
Well,
making a face.
I think before Death Wish came out, you can look at his movies, and a lot of times he would be the underdog in
Hmm.
a movie like Mr. Majestic, where there you've got a hitman that totally looks down on him, like he's nobody, totally underestimates him, and you find out that Bronson just kind of makes mincemeat of the guy by the end, even though he was kind of supposedly the more powerful man. It's kind of like when Death Wish came out, and he kind of got more, especially into the '80s, when he got more shoehorned into a certain type of vigilante in almost every. That's when
Hmm.
he kind of got out of what I would call the underdog stage of his career. But before Death Wish, his character was often kind of looked down on by other people, and then he would rise up and be have a lot more going for him than people would give him credit for. That's one of the things
Right.
I liked about him as an actor.
I don't know why he was looked down on before Death Wish. I mean, I do know that during the time of Death Wish, people were scared because of what was going on. They wanted a savior and they look at him. But I mean, couldn't they see that with those other films? Like,
Mhm.
see, this guy had a heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he got so lambasted by the critics. I mean, he's kind of like, I mean, Clint Eastwood made a lot of really violent, really over the top, silly movies, but
Dirty Harry.
Clint Eastwood gets a lot more. I think he gets a little more respect. I think. But then there are people though that are just recently I'm discovering on the internet, like Dick Van Dyke was his neighbor and loved
Yeah.
him. Thought he was a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
I do want to make sure I make my point clear of what I was saying earlier. I felt like his character, not necessarily the way Bronson was looked at by the critics or anything, but his character was more of the underdog in those
mhm,
pre-Death Wish
right.
movies.
And I was
And
talking the opposite. I was
mhm,
talking the opposite. I was saying he underdog's probably not the word, but
mhm,
like he kept doing he kept doing the kind of movies we liked as fans in spite of what the critics said. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And I think he could have well, you know what? He did do Indian Runner. And
mhm.
I think I think he could have done more films like that. Um so he could be maybe remembered in a different light. But you know what? Who cares? We love what we love. We love
I know,
him.
he was
We
great.
I
love him
love him
wasting
regardless.
creeps. Yeah, we
But
love
that's
him
true.
wasting creeps.
On and off screen, he did not take shit from people, like not the critics.
No, no. He did not suffer fools, as the
They
expression.
didn't pay for their tickets anyway. That's what he said.
That's
Hmm.
right.
That's true. Oh man, I've heard so many great stories about him.
Me
But
too.
so you're hoping hoping to get this thing out there then, right?
Yeah,
Get
to
this show on
Broadway.
the road. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I really want the world to see this eventually.
Will you come back and do the show again sometime? Watch a movie and chill with us.
Yeah, I think how about Death Hunt?
All
There
right,
you
yeah.
go.
We could do that. Like what we do is, I mean, we don't watch it together, but we'll just watch it beforehand and we get together and we and then usually I'll like break up I'll give people little assignments. Like I'll say, Brad, find the 10 TV shows that are on at night. I'll say, Danny, grab the records, what records were out and all that. And we have a lot of fun with it, man. And I think you'll like that movie. So, yeah.
Awesome. So
Uh,
much for having me.
yeah, it's great having you, man. We're really proud of you. Brad, you have anything else for the young man?
I don't have anything other than just say I'm very happy to have this opportunity to hear about the musical. Thank you for putting this together, Henry. And I tell you, we're at This Week in Charles Bronson. We're just rooting for you and this musical 100% because we do this for fun. This is fun for us, and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see somebody putting together something that's going to bring, more awareness of Bronson and who he was as a person, not just as a one of he's my all-time favorite actor. So I just thank you for that.
Yeah.
Means a lot.
Bronson awareness. It's very important.
I
Hey,
agree.
before you go, I always forget to do this. Can you say, this is Henry Brooks from Charles Bronson the Musical, and you're listening to This Week in Charles Bronson. Can you cut one of them for us?
Sure. This is Henry Brooks from Charles Bronson, More Than the Vigilante the Musical, at This Week in Charles Bronson.
Thank you very much, brother. It was great talking to you, man, and I look forward to doing a Death Hunt episode with you.
Awesome. Sounds cool.
All right, thanks.
Take it easy, Henry.
Bradley, thank you.
Meet you all.
Thanks, guys.